And here we are for an episode of Dualistic Unity Social. I was going to say an unexpected episode, but I think it's just because I've been gone for so goddamn long. It's a social episode. It means that we are on Instagram. For anybody who doesn't know what a social episode is, it's really not that different than a raw episode, except that we are on Instagram as well. We also try to stream on TikTok at the same time. And so that means we respond to comments, we respond to questions and things as they pop up. Again, as best we can. So if you are on social media and you're following Dualistic Unity or not Andrew Murnane on Instagram or Coalition for don't worry, go that we don't stream from that one, or Transcending Me on TikTok, you can find us there. On Tuesdays, apparently that's not working. On Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and we do that right before we do the call-in show, which is a Q&A and call-in show. Or the roundtable episodes, which I fucking love the roundtable episodes. Anyway, so that's the beginning of the episode. I've said everything I need to say, and I'm going to shut the fuck up and pass the mic.
Sweet. Yes, we're on social right now. I am getting on Instagram here. Adding that into the stream. But yeah, I am having a fun week back in Nanaimo from camping this past weekend. I know we chatted a bunch about the camping trip yesterday and all the shifts in perspective and appreciation for just being able to live life and have a self-sustaining sort of day and being able to just do things, and how separated we've gotten from that experience of just like, living in a forest, for example, where you do something, in order to fulfill the rest of your day. You're hungry, you cook some food, you eat the food. It's not so much stocking up. It's not so much, having a big pantry full of food. So whenever you need something, it's just right there. You got to walk 5 feet, but you got to go out and you got to cook something, and you got to, even if you go to the grocery store while you're camping, it's like, if you don't have a big refrigerator, you can't even keep that for more than a day. So yeah, camping was incredible. For anyone who has thought about it or maybe wondered why the hell they even would, I would definitely highly recommend it. Definitely learned a lot, and yeah, that's my 2 cents, right?
That's awesome. And I want to mention, last night we all went and saw Fidelium live. Yes, their performance at the Port Theater. Wow, that was amazing. It was okay. Well, I'm not going to talk about it because I've seen them before. And I'll admit, last night's performance was incredible. Oh, what's epic! But what were your thoughts?
It was spectacular. I was blown away. I cried. I laughed. I was surprised. They had such an amazing variety of music. Sometimes, some of the songs made me feel like it was spooky. They said one of the songs was spooky, and it very much felt like very Halloween spooky themed. And another one, I felt like I was in like an Arabian adventure. And then another time I felt like I was in like this Western movie, and I was like riding a horse on like a sunset. It was incredible. The songs that they picked, the choreography, the feeling, the expressions, it was just outstanding. I highly recommend, if you can see a Fidelium show in person, without a doubt, well worth your time. Felt incredible.
Yeah, and the song that was spooky, they learned at the Fiddle Summit that was hosted by Fidelium creators Trish and Jeff Horrocks. A couple months ago, they had 120 or so people come together, fiddle players from across Canada come together here in Nanaimo to learn a bunch of new stuff. And so they learned this spooky kind of jam from the Calgary group of fiddlers, and it's called the Skeleton Rag.
Oh, yes.
It's quite good. Actually, I got a video of the Skeleton Rag from start to finish, so maybe we'll play that in Patreon later on.
Ooh, definitely down to hear that one again. Yeah, I'm glad I filmed a number of clips last night, and I'm very glad I did, because I re-listened to a lot of them this morning and threw them on my Instagram story. I'm not really one much to post like concert videos on Instagram stories. Sometimes that can get, to be a lot when someone goes to a concert, but a concert like that, I feel like I'm just doing everyone a favor, even just listening to it and closing your eyes and really being able to hear all the variations, because like there's a big group of them playing, and a lot of them are playing in different, different melodies, different tones, different songs, basically. But until you settle in, you don't really realize that there's multiple things going on. So yeah, it was just a absolutely incredible performance. Like Trish and Jeff are doing an awesome thing there. It's really cool to be able to see just like teenagers working really, really hard at something, but then also having a lot of fun with it, like not taking it super seriously, not taking themselves super seriously, because it makes for the performance a lot of fun for the audience. And I think the audience was having as good of a time or close to as the kids last night. So yeah, it was really fun to see the variations in songs as well, like the different types of songs that they would play, the ways that they would vary the tones and the feelings that you would get from things. I never thought of violin as being something you could vary that much,
right?
Like just the way you play it. And
so versatile.
Yeah, they showed that certainly wasn't the case. It can be very versatile. So,
and seeing as how you have all those videos, maybe you can watch some of those later on Patreon.
Here we go.
Cool.
So
join us on Patreon if you can. If you don't know, we have a Patreon. We do groups 5 days a week. You can chat with us. You get incredible discounts on pretty much everything. There's merch. There's a bunch of stuff. Go check it out. And if you'd like to chat with us after this and after the call-in show, then you can join us there. We have an hour and a half call. It's tier 2 and tier 3. We also have a 7-day free trial if you would like to try out a tier 2 membership. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, before I go on about Fiona, what were your thoughts? Did you weigh in on this already? I think you both weighed in.
I did.
Fidelia.
I mean, amazing.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
What did you think of the choir? Because the Nanaimo Youth Choir also performed in the middle of the show. I loved the fact that they brought them in. I thought they did a great job.
I think so.
It's like good acoustics.
Cool little addition to the and then they played together, because then the choir was just solo for a bit, and like really, really incredible, like opera high-pitched songs.
Right.
And then Fidelium members came in behind them and started playing as they were singing, and then it was just like, match made in heaven.
Yeah, I loved it for
that
sure.
was really cool. They did the Nanaimo Youth Choir. They sounded almost ethereal. It was so cool. It definitely felt Lord of the Rings-esque, or on the Scottish hills, it definitely felt ancient, like it just was really cool, because they that was their guest performance. And they always have a guest performer, and I was like, that was an
someone
excellent
local
choice.
too.
Yeah, I think that was really cool that they share the stage, and that they make room for other artists to express themselves, and how that's a priority for Trish and Jeff is really cool. And it's amazing to see everyone being themselves and feeling light.
And a little bit of inside information. Fidelium is going to be recording their 3rd album on Thursday this week, which is super exciting. And my daughter is going to be playing in it.
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
Do they do that?
She did amazing last night.
I don't know where they do that. They do that somewhere.
Cool,
it'd be cool if we could go see. I think we got invited.
I think we might.
We might have to work on being invited if we haven't been. It's just
Working on that.
such an incredible experience to be able to, and I think it's more fulfilling because, again, like I'm a parent to Celeste, and so immediately I'm like, wow, look at the progress. And then I see all the other kids, and I'm like, oh my God, they've all had journeys of their own to get here. Wow. And you really want to support it. But this is the same thing that happens to me at retreats. I find I get very emotional during karaoke at retreats, and it's because a lot of the people who come to the retreats have been to a retreat before. We get a lot of newbies, but on the other hand, we have people who went to the first or the second retreat in Port Alberni, for example, who've come to mini retreats since, and they get up and you see the progression from the first time they either didn't want to go get up and sing at karaoke and then hesitantly conquered that demon, to the next time where it was a little easier for them, and to the last time they show up and there's like, just give me the mic. I got this shit. Yeah, absolutely. Sit down, enjoy the show. And
welcome everyone.
And so they get up and they sing, and I see the whole progression of that person. I see that entire story, and how much has been faced, and then it's uncanny how often the songs that they pick symbolize the changes that they've gone through. Right, and that's makes it even more, in itself. And so, yeah, it was really cool just to be able to look at so many stories, so many moments of challenge, so many moments of pushing forward for all of these kids. My daughter and I were talking about this earlier today. She's like, it's amazing to me that I've come this far. I'm like, look at all the other things you've conquered, though. Like at one point you took fencing for 8 years. And she was the smallest little fencer in there. Oh yeah, she was great, and she conquered other things on the road. She took a few acting classes. She took a singing class. She did things like that, all of which she was nervous about, all of which she thought she couldn't do, and she pushed on. Violin's the same thing, and that's the point, though, is that these little choices that we have to either give in to our frustrations and give in to our expectations of ourselves to be perfect, or to just keep moving forward. We may not see how powerful they are, but all of a sudden, a decade later, your entire life has changed. And it's always in the little choices. I really appreciate that about performances like this and groups like Fidelium, and just all of us, humanity as a whole. It's the little choices, That doesn't take much, but before you know it, all those little choices have a massive impact. It's exciting.
It really is, because they're cumulative too. Like, that's not to say that there's should be incentive outside of just jumping into new things or making that little choice one way or the other, maybe to be a little bit less selfish, or to try something new, or to feel really nervous about something and just be willing to keep going. We have those opportunities throughout every day. And a lot of times when we stick to familiar situations or ways of doing things, or even, again, as simple as ordering the same thing off a menu, something you always try, versus trying something new. It's like that can be expanded out into your entire life, the way you live your day. But perspectives shift as you do, and you're more willing to. And I think there's always going to be this draw to the familiar, to the comfortable, just because it is more familiar. That's why it's so comfortable, is because it's familiar. It's a situation, a room, an area that you've explored fully. And you can get really good at certain things and feel really good about yourself when you're doing those things. A professional athlete, for example, a pro golfer, they're going to feel really good when they're playing golf, of course, but maybe they feel like they have a terrible voice and they never do karaoke. So they're not going to feel the same way about themselves when they're at karaoke. They're going to potentially feel way more insecure, way more nervous. And a lot of the times we just don't do those situations. We just don't try those things. We don't, as soon as it's a little bit uncomfortable, or it's a new thing, or, the going gets tough, it's there can be an aversion to that, just because the world right now has made it very easy to stay comfortable, but there is a cost. There's a limitation of your life. There's going to be a lot of things that are avoided. And if the priority is just, trying to feel really, really good about yourself, again, it's just the options become more and more limited. And that limits, the faith in yourself, because it's the more things, the more new things, it can be like a muscle, I think. And the more new things you try and jump into and do, despite certain perspectives of those things, the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you shift, the more you build that faith in yourself. But it's those spots where it's the small choices throughout a day, where it's there are opportunities one way or the other and making those, the little decisions. It's not always big drastic changes and moves and blah blah blah. Like, it can feel like that. We can almost pass off responsibility for making the little choices to these big drastic decisions and focus on those, but it almost doesn't have to do as much with those. Like, those big changes are just as much a littler one that maybe has the potential for different choices to be made in that situation, but it doesn't mean in itself that it's as big of a change as it feels like.
Right. I like how you said the big changes, because even when you quote unquote make the big change, the implementation is a series of small changes. And we think that the small choices are small, but in the moment, that small choice is the only choice. That is the whole moment, right? Right. You're like, all right, I'm sitting here. I could wait for someone to be like, Amanda, what do you think? Or I could jump in. Am I waiting for an invitation? Somebody needs to roll out the metaphorical red carpet, or are we just going to be like, I'd like to jump on what you just said, Andrew. These choices that you're talking about. There's a little choice that we're making right now. Feels crazy big right now. And it's just the little choice of saying something, of jumping in, of trusting myself to figure it out as it unfolds. But it's just it almost feels like almost an unnecessary middleman to measure the choice or to classify it as big or small. It's like, it's just the choice of the moment, and that moment is my whole life right now. And so this quote unquote small choice feels monumental because it's the moment. It's everything that I'm experiencing right now. And so fuck calling them big or small. Are you sensitive to the choice that you're making right now?
Exactly. Well said. And that's really all we've got. And that's what we're talking about in terms of sensitivity, of intuition, of just having the audacity to trust yourself. Because that's really it. That's all it comes down to. It's just like, well, I want to talk. I'm going to talk. That's pretty much it. But it's not like I want to talk. I need to talk. I'm going to talk over everyone. It's not that. It's, I want to talk. And there's an appropriate gap. I'm in. And I think that's part of what people have difficulty with early on. I know I did, finding the gap and not missing it because of hesitation and doubt. Right? It's kind of like skip rope, where you got two people holding the rope and they're going back and forth, right? And you jump in, but you've got to practice the timing to jump in. And sometimes you just keep getting hit by the ropes, and so you judge yourself and you're like, oh, I'm not very good at skip rope. Everybody else finds it easier. It's like, no, it's just slow down, and don't judge yourself for getting hit by the rope. You'll figure it out. You'll get that timing. And the same is true with conversation. Like, the dance of it all is that sometimes you're too busy thinking about yourself. Like, oh God, I hope my timing's good. Everybody else's timing's better. You just miss the timing.
Right there.
You're a half second behind. It's very much the reason that we talk about sensitivity. That sensitivity comes from not getting stuck in that idea of yourself. So that way you're just like, oh, here's a gap and go.
And then as soon as there is, and it's like,
I was thinking about it.
I was processing whatever that. And again, it's like, it's not even something to be processed. Like the thoughts, when you are feeling more in flow of a conversation, involved in a conversation, like I can notice sometimes when it's like, oh, I'm not really thinking anything right now. It's just, messages being received and then expressed. And it, like, I'll remember when I do feel like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm, out of this conversation or separated from the conversation or not, in the conversation in the same way. Like, oh, when I was feeling like I wasn't thinking about it. Like it wasn't something that was trying to be processed, because every time it's like, you're going to be that step behind. And then there's going to be like potentially a gap. If there is, the gap's more felt instead of like jumped on, or gotten through to, because then it's like you feel the gap instead of just like being involved in the conversation. But that's, I guess just faith in yourself in a lot of ways. And being relaxed is huge. I think as soon as you're tense, there's going to be, it's almost like trying to, I don't know, time up a button on Wheel of Fortune instead of just kind of like having a sense for it and feeling relaxed and then tapping the button when it's like, you know, on the jackpot or whatever thing. I very much feel like tension can be, I don't know, restrictive to that sort of feeling. And that's similar
Intuition.
to, yeah.
And that, well, I mean, that's the premise of most, like, well, of Tai Chi, for example, and Wing Chun and other martial arts, is that tension actually makes it harder for you to deal with any situation. And it's because you're slow, right? Like the reason that you're supposed to relax your arms when you punch is because if they're tense, you're really slow. But not only that, like, so in Wing Chun, we try to make contact with the person who's attacking us. Why? Well, because we know our eyes are a half second to a second behind. So by the time that person's swung, our eyes take a second to register what the hell's happening, right? Whereas if we have contact, our nervous system's way faster, transmits the information way quicker, so you can feel where they're going, and you're not relying on the eyesight, right? But that means intuition, delay, which means relaxation, because you have to be sensitive. Because if you're all tense against the person, you're not feeling their energy at all. You're not feeling their pressure. You're too busy holding up your own.
Right.
So you literally have to relax to make contact, to be able to feel what's happening, to be able to be closer to the moment that it's happening in. Right? And that's life as a whole, is being able to feel the choices as they come, because you're relaxed enough to face them, and you're not just doing the jerky response to them, you know, because that's what happens. Life comes, it hits us with something new, and we go, ah, and we panic. And we either panic and act aggressively, or we panic in fear and then we run the other way instead of just relaxing into it. You know, and finding that our choices are still the same without the panic. That, in fact, the panic creates a whole journey where we have to come back to the same goddamn choices that were there before we panicked. So why not just relax, right? Feel the timing out, as somebody just said in the comment section. Which reminds me, this is a social episode. Somebody asked a question. Do you believe a child owes something to his or her parents, given that the parent raised him or her when the infant wasn't capable of doing anything? Ooh, this should be good.
No, certainly not. Well, first of all, the child didn't ask to be born, so that was something the parents decided upon. So even just right there, it's like that then shifts the perspective or the conversation of that expectation, because, you know, the child was raised by the parent. It's like the child didn't have a choice in being born either. And so, yeah, and I think a lot of times that is why people can have kids. They expect them to take care of them as they get older, but that expectation is going to lead to degrees of weight that may be unforeseen by the parents, you know, to continue to almost look after or listen to them, or like that they know what's best all the time. Because, you know, as you grow up, that's going to change and shift, and like maybe perspectives don't align in a lot of ways. And so to continue to expect that, I think is a lot to ask, you know, and if that's the case, then it's going to be something that's continued to be passed down and expected. And outside of that relationship, with any relationship, expectations, like expecting someone to do something for you or be something for you or act a certain way or act in the way that you know, that best validates your perspective of yourself, because that's where a lot of judgment comes from. It's like if someone's living in a way that doesn't validate your way of living being the right way, then it's like there's a good chance there's going to be judgment there. And so expectations, period, for someone to be different than they are, live differently than they are, act differently than they are, is kind of absurd. And if you are expecting someone to act differently and they're not, then it's like that relationship doesn't have to continue. And that goes for every relationship all the time. Like those expectations get heavy, very heavy.
And they're certainly not required. The answer to the question, just no. Like the child does not their parents. Like, what am I? I'm a born indentured servant. I'm like king parents. Paid for my travel across the uterine seas, and so here we are. I must owe them labor later on because they paid for my travel. Like, no, that just makes no sense to think that I owe my parents. I guess when I hear this, like, what do you owe them? It's like taking care of them in their old age is the first thing that comes to mind, right? Because is it that I need to be spending time with them on a scheduled basis? Do I need to be calling them every day? Do I need to be visiting them every week? When they get older, do they need to move into my house? Like, this just feels like a lot of unnecessary work, I don't talk to my parents. I don't talk to my dad at all. And I talk to my mom every once in a while, but I don't think, I should be calling her more in the same way that I don't think I should be calling my friends more, and
Sorry.
Little remix, play, run that back, DJ. But like my life is my priority in the same way that their life should be theirs, and they're fully capable of handling their day-to-day choices. They're fully capable of maintaining their mind, their body. We can spend time with each other because we want to, not because we have to. And if I don't want to let strangers and friends get away with certain things, why does family get a pass? Why would my parents get away with being able to like emotionally blackmail me to spending time with them or doing things for them when I wouldn't want to let other people do that? So I don't let family get away with that either. We don't have to do anything, but I look forward to spending time together because we both want to.
It's a good answer. I'm gonna say the same thing as these two. No, you don't know anything to your parents just because they brought you into the world. But that said, I would like to say, and this is something I went through for a long time because I had less than ideal parents, and after I became a parent, I realized the weight of it. Like, I realized how much responsibility is there, and how much, had I not been through a number of things, I would not have recognized that whatsoever, and how often people get into that situation of parenthood with, frankly, just a lack of development up until that point. And so you have a little bit more than children raising children. And it's a lot. And so I think that as you grow in yourself, you're going to end up looking at your parents in different ways. And eventually you're going to look at them as human beings that don't know what the fuck they're doing. And you're going to at least go, well, I'm grateful at least I'm here. And that doesn't come with any obligation, but it is definitely a feeling of empathy towards them. That doesn't mean that you should go out and try to establish, a tighter relationship and all of that, because that's just trying to play a role again and end up in a Disney movie. But it does mean that you just, I don't know, they become more human over time. They become less parents as you become less of a child.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I think a big line, and just last thing to add, like a big line is seeing where things are expectations. Because I love my parents. I love hanging with them, talking to them, but I think it's important. And I've seen them more as, human beings, as friends, than some like child parent expected relationship type thing. Because I think if you are someone, and sometimes, you don't realize where things can be expectations. And I'm not necessarily talking specifically, but in my life, I definitely found family, be it distant relatives, close family, to be a big part of my comfort zone. And it was something that, I kind of focused on and prioritized above everything, including like work stuff, including a lot of times friends stuff too. Like I would prioritize being around, family above all of those other relationships. And right now, with everything we're doing with Dualistic Unity and just like continuing to grow in myself and be myself, and kind of feel like I'm figuring that out in a lot of ways for the first time in my life. Like, it's been like all my relationships have shifted and changed. And, sometimes you do notice, even with close friends, where there's sort of like expectations to keep in touch. And when you do notice where expectations are, like it'd be helpful to just notice them and not necessarily force anything one way or the other, but just recognize it and keep living your life for yourself too. Because, you don't owe anyone anything necessarily. I think there's a difference if you are a parent that has a child, like there's a responsibility there. It's not necessarily a guaranteed responsibility or an objective responsibility, but it's a lot more important than, some other relationship that's more of a even relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And those have a way of shifting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a damn good question. Thank you to the person on Instagram who asked it during the social episode. We have another question. This one is from YouTube Live. Is there even a question worth asking if anything inevitably leads to this unlimited presence with no identity or thought?
Yeah, not for an answer, but for the experience. Like, I definitely have had points where I'm like, there are no questions worth asking because everything, is what it is. Again, like no identity, no thoughts. But as much as you can live your life just thinking that, questions aren't worth asking, blah, 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 and kind of like stick to that train track very rigidly, there's a whole reality of experience, that is real, moment to moment, conversations, interactions, playing games, doing work, going to the office, commuting, raising family, having kids, all that life, like birth, death, all of that is just as real as, there's no identity, thoughts, period. Like they're equal. They're equal. It's not like one's a little bit more than the other, because recognizing that like makes you feel more. It's like, no, it doesn't at all. And if that's what you're using to make you feel better, thinking that is nothing is, as much as it's fun to have the conversation, like, nothing is what we think. Reality isn't what we think. You're not what you think. There is equally as true of a reality that involves lots of fun questions and, messing around and joking around and not taking everything so goddamn seriously all the time.
Right. I ask, why not? And just like that, questions are just experienced, right? And I love how you put that, like, just, yes, it is worth it when you're not looking for an answer. Right. And when you are looking for an answer, it doesn't feel like it's worth it because you don't get a satisfying answer. But questions can still be asked, and explored, and perceptions can change, and you can ride perceptions like a wave. And the perception is like the surfboard, and you're just, hopping on different boards for different waves, and it doesn't need to go anywhere. But why not is just as equal to why. Why do this? What's the point? Why not?
Yeah, I would go and add to that. What makes you think you're in control of that? Because you just asked a question, and this leads to this unlimited presence with no identity or thought. Because that's the underlying foundation of this. Reality is what it is, right? That's pretty much it. But we're going through individually and collectively perceptions of reality, thoughts about reality, thoughts about ourselves, and we're experiencing the consequence and lessons that go with all of those thoughts, with all of those different perceptions. And so one wonders if this is, again, just another element of change, that as we go through all these different thoughts, we are coming to a greater understanding of what we are in terms of that unlimited presence that you're talking about. Because the words unlimited presence have nothing to do with the reality of unlimited presence. Even to, think about, the reality of unlimited presence with no identity or thought. You're thinking about that. It's not the thing you're thinking about whatsoever. It's not actually that. Right? It's just, that's just now an ideal. It's a thought. It's a concept. It has nothing to do with it because it's, again, a product of the known. It's a product of things you've already thought before. It has nothing to do with reality. And so I think that the gap between what is and our ability to understand that we are what is huge. I think it's a big gap. And as much as that it doesn't exist whatsoever, there is a process of thinking. In the same way that there's a process of development for an individual human being, I think that there is a process of development for a species as a whole. I think that humanity is still very much in the teenage phase of growing up as a whole, but I don't think that we recognize that that means individuals evolving. It doesn't mean like the mass evolves together. It means enough individuals evolve within the mass that the mass takes a leap forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what this is. I think that we're going through thoughts because they're a part of how we live.
Mm-hmm.
You walk down the street, you see a political sign, you see an advertisement, you see anything. These are all things in the realm of thought and identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have no choice but to go through these things. You are in the physical representation of them. But the physical representation comes from the conscious action happening in the background,
Mm-hmm.
which is our collective thoughts. So they perpetuate each other.
Mm-hmm.
So as we change, the environment changes. And the
Right.
environment changes the thoughts that are available for the people who are now growing up in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like my daughter has a very different perspective of the world than I do, because she grew up in an entirely different time period than I did. The environment was different. The messaging was different. The tone was different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everything changes. And so we have this incredible capacity to change the world by simply changing ourselves. This is why I liked our idea of doing a billboard campaign with no branding.
Mm-hmm.
Zero branding, just a message that just kicks you in the consciousness and makes you think. Maybe it's not about what I think it is. You know, maybe we are all one. You know, maybe I'm not what I think I am. Anything like that. Like, even have a message in a bus going, you know those moments of insecurity when you feel like everybody's judging you? Everyone in this bus has felt the same.
Right.
Just have that sign with no branding.
Mm-hmm.
No
I'm
branding.
probably
Right.
feeling it right now.
Right.
Exactly.
Get out of my head, Darren.
Right. But that's it. Zero branding. Why? Because there are so many messages right now. If you turn on the TV or you listen to ads on YouTube, but some of them, they're like, moments of friendship, moments of getting out into the forest, moments of personal freedom, moments of being present.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's tied to a fucking car.
Right.
Right? It's tied to some kind of a brand. It's tied to a political movement. It's tied to some religion. It's not simply for the message itself.
No.
And that is unfortunately the underlying message in so much of what we do. This was done for a purpose.
A means to an end.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's our
This was
favorite.
done for somebody to benefit.
Uh-huh.
And that's yours.
Exactly. And more importantly, we want your money.
Uh-huh.
But that's it. Is we have this capacity to change the world for everyone simply by changing the world for ourselves, by changing our priorities, by not needing that recognition, by being willing to put money or attention or time or anything into something like that without asking anything in return. Perfect goddamn example. Here in Nanaimo, someone or a group of someone's over the years have just gone around and put little signs up
Oh, yes.
on the fucking light posts
Mm-hmm.
all throughout the city. We found
Handmade
one.
signs.
They're handmade signs. They've all been drawn by hand
Painted.
with paint, and they've been nailed up
Colors.
throughout the city. I could not believe that we saw one down by our campsite.
They get around.
They get around. Like, this person's been at this for a long time, but all of them are messages like be yourself, love one another, sing
Breathe.
because you mean it,
Yeah.
just breathe.
Sing right now.
Right? Like, just stuff like
Smile if you pooped.
Oh,
Right?
It's not. Yep, that was a good one.
that. No.
Everybody poops.
No credit whatsoever. Nobody signed these things. I've never seen anything that's like, these signs are done by blah, blah, blah.
No, you have
Never.
no idea.
Never. And yet I'll walk down the street and I'll read one of those and I go, nice. Yeah.
Right.
Because it makes a difference. It's a different environment. And it inspires me because I see kids walking by those signs every day, and they may not see it, but it does impact their environment. It impacts their walk home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's dope. And so stuff like that, like somebody just felt that was worthwhile to do, not in the name of a religion or anything, because it doesn't promote anything.
Nothing but authenticity
Yeah.
and openness and giving yourself that space. And I love that when you were talking, Ray, it reminded me of the chat that we had when we were camping and we saw the heron, and we're by the beach and we're in the gazebo and we're looking at this heron as it's perched in the water and it's like looking for prey. And, and we're just watching it, and we're talking about natural selection and how, we don't know if this heron is taller or shorter than the other ones, but if it's able to successfully catch food and have offspring, then it's what the change it's embodying will go on. Okay. It will continue in the same way that we can make that lasting impact, and we can take another, because we were saying with the heron, every step deeper that it goes into the river is it like an inch taller that its offspring might be, and that's what we have the potential to do. Every step deeper that we go into this conversation, into this experience, is a little bit deeper that the next wave of us can go, and so it's worth taking that step because the change lasts longer than just our lifetime.
Yeah. And just that shift right now, specifically being not taking so much credit for yourself, not, because then at the end of the day, you aren't left with, this period of like thinking about yourself and like measuring each thing that you did throughout the day and trying to like feel good about yourself, that you have to do by thinking instead of just, doing things. And if you don't take the credit or take the positive side, there's less pull on the negative side. Like there is impact over that, but it takes a practice, it takes actions to shift it. It's living your life differently. It's taking those times where you do really want to take credit for something, or you do want to put yourself first, or you do want to act selfishly, or you do want to, do the familiar thing or similar thing that you've always done, and you just like do something new or try something else or go down a different path or move somewhere else, or all these things are shifts, getting out of our comfort zones. Like that's, as you said with the heron, like that's evolution happening. Like we're evolution happening, which is cool. Like that could be a focus instead of the fame, fortune, riches, all the cars in the world. Could be, how much can I evolve? Like how involved with evolution can I be? Because it is happening right now. And a lot of the world is built around resisting change, which is resisting evolution, but it's still happening one way or the other.
What is our potential if we just embrace it and actually make it the focus, right? Man, this has been a fun conversation. We got like 2.5 minutes left. I just want to remind everybody, we've got a call-in show after this. So if you would like to join us, please do. If you have a question, but you don't want to be on the show, you can either participate by joining us on Twitch or YouTube Live in the comments section, or you can go to our community Discord and you can go to the questions section. There's a questions and answers thread, and just fill in the question there. We will check that out mid-episode and see if we can answer some questions. It's going to be a lot of fun. I enjoyed these episodes, but it's funny when you really just get down to it. We're all very much just in the process of change, and we rarely look at that as a positive. We're often so busy just resisting it and fearing it that we forget that we are change. That we are change in motion. We have one more question. We don't have time to answer it, but I'll ask. May I ask, how do you accept this absence of control and let yourself ease into situations that seem like mind traps that you create and react to? That is a damn good question. Yep. I wish we could answer it. And if you can, copy and paste that thing and join us in the call-in show /Q&A call-in show in the next 15 minutes. We'll be back on Twitch and YouTube Live and X and Facebook and LinkedIn. We will not be on the Instagram because that is for a social episode. So thank you for joining us, everyone.
All right. Appreciate you tuning in.